Hey everyone, welcome back to Sip and Talk.
We sift through, piles of information, research notes, and basically pull out what you really need to know fast.
Yep, get you up to speed quickly.
And today we're diving into something really complex, super relevant right now. The whole Taiwan and mainland China relationship. And it's not just politics, right? Or military moves. There's history, different ways of life. It's deep.
It really is. And that's our plan for this deep dive, looking at the info we've gathered. We want to unpack maybe 3 key things.
Okay.
First, those fundamental differences, values, systems. Then what's happening inside the mainland, those internal dynamics. And finally, the big picture. Why the rest of the world cares so much.
Right. So the mission is give you the core issues, maybe some surprising facts, and really show why this matters globally, all based on what we've been digging into. Let's just jump right in.
Absolutely. And I think the starting point really has to be that it's more than just territory or politics. At its heart, it feels like a competition between 2 very different ways of living.
Yeah, that definitely jumps out, this idea of clashing values being central.
Exactly. I mean, look at Taiwan, especially since the 90s. It's become this really vibrant democracy, right? Multiple parties, free press, active civil society.
Plus a super advanced economy.
Totally.
Yeah.
High-tech, dynamic. People have freedoms. Now, contrast that with the mainland system, centralized. One party, much tighter control over, pretty much everything. Information, society.
So from an international perspective.
Well, the information suggests that, especially for other democracies, Taiwan's path, more open, democratic, seems more aligned with where the world is generally heading. It kind of revisits a different possibility for Chinese society.
And then there's that whole historical layer adding complexity, the legitimacy dispute. You've got the ROC in Taiwan, tracing back before 49, and the PRC on the mainland, both used to claim all of China.
Precisely. And the PRC still maintains its one China principle. Taiwan is part of it, must unify, maybe even by force. They offered one country, 2 systems.
Yeah, like Hong Kong. And we've seen how that's gone. Not exactly a selling point for Taiwan.
Not at all. So Taiwan's view, grounded in its own constitution and democratic reality, is different. Unification under the PRC's current system, just not seen as possible.
So what is their position?
Well, consistently, it's that any change has to be decided by the Taiwanese people. And unification. Only if the mainland became, democratic, free, respected rule of law.
Which isn't happening anytime soon.
Right. So the default, the overwhelming preference, according to polls and just political reality, is maintaining the status quo.
Yeah.
De facto self-rule. Keep things as they are.
Okay, so you've got this deep historical fight over who's legitimate, plus this fundamental clash over how people should live. It's way more than just lines on a map.
Absolutely. It's about which model, which future is seen as, better, more successful.
Okay, that sets the stage. Now, let's pivot and look inward at the mainland side. The information we looked at really emphasizes how internal challenges, especially for the leadership, are affecting this whole situation.
Yeah, this is fascinating, Joe. Xi Jinping's huge anti-corruption drive. Officially, it's about clean governance, but analysis suggests it's also very much about consolidating power, ensuring loyalty.
And it's hit the military, the PLA, particularly hard.
Oh, definitely. The scale is quite striking. We're not talking small fry. Multiple defense ministers gone. Top people in the rocket force critical for missiles purged.
Wow.
Senior figures on the Central Military Commission, the very top body. Even commanders reportedly involved in Taiwan invasion planning, like the former head of the Southern Theater Command. It's extensive.
Purging guys, supposedly planning an invasion. That seems odd if invasion is the priority. What does that kind of upheaval do to the military itself?
Well, it creates a lot of uncertainty and probably quite a bit of mistrust up and down the ranks.
Makes sense if your boss suddenly disappears.
Exactly. You get cautious. It raises real questions about cohesion, how reliable the command structure is, and frankly, their actual combat readiness for something incredibly complex like landed troops on Taiwan.
So it might actually reduce their capability in the short term.
It could. And there's even analysis suggesting a sort of darker possibility. Maybe some generals feeling insecure or ambitious might actually want conflict.
Why?
Not necessarily for unification itself, but because wartime could give them real command power, independence, that they don't have under Xi's tight control, which ironically could make them a potential threat to Xi.
That's quite a thought. So it's this weird paradox then. The leadership knows attacking Taiwan is incredibly risky. could even destabilize their own rule.
Absolutely. Massive risk.
Yet they keep talking about unification, keep up the military pressure, mention readiness goals like 2027.
It does seem contradictory, but, regime legitimacy is key. Unification is core ideology, a nationalist rallying cry.
So it's partly for domestic consumption.
Probably a big part. Facing economic headwinds, international pressure. Projecting strength on Taiwan helps shore up support at home. It shows resolve. Even if they don't actually want to pull the trigger right now because of the risks, and maybe because of these internal military issues, the talk, the pressure, it continues.
Okay, that connects the internal picture. Now let's zoom out again, the global view. Taiwan's definitely getting a lot more international attention lately, especially from the U.S.
Oh, for sure. There's been a noticeable shift, maybe since around 2017. A much clearer effort by the U.S. and allies to strengthen ties with Taiwan, sell more arms, build partnerships in the region, specifically to deter mainland action.
Which brings us to the big question, why? Why does this island, 23 million people, relatively small, matter so much globally?
Two huge reasons, really interconnected. First, and maybe the most talked about, semiconductors.
The chips.
Exactly, the really advanced ones, the kind that power everything, phones, AI, military tech. Taiwan's semiconductor manufacturing company, TSMC, they dominate. Over 90% of the most advanced chip production globally.
90%, wow.
Yeah, basically, every major tech company, U.S. included, depends on TSMC's fabs in Taiwan. If that production stops, say, because of a conflict, the global economy faces an unbelievable shock. It could literally halt major industries.
So the fact that the U.S. is pushing TSMC to build plants in Arizona, that's part of this calculation.
Absolutely. It shows just how critical, how indispensable Taiwan is seen for modern tech. It's a massive choke point.
Okay, so chips are number one. What's the second reason?
Strategic location.
Yeah.
Geography. Taiwan sits right on the first island chain. It overlooks vital international shipping lanes, especially at the Taiwan Strait.
Right. Huge amounts of trade pass through there.
Massive amounts. Energy, goods, everything. If the mainland controlled Taiwan, they'd have significant leverage over those sea lanes. It would fundamentally shift the power balance in the Indo-Pacific, potentially affecting freedom of navigation.
So you've got this economic linchpin and the strategic gateway. That explains why countries like the U.S., Japan, Australia, even European nations are paying such close attention.
Exactly. The thinking seems to be a cost-benefit analysis.
How so?
Well, many countries figure the cost of supporting Taiwan, now diplomatically, militarily, economically, is high, yes, but much, much lower than the potential cost of not acting.
The cost of inaction being?
The fear is, if the mainland took Taiwan by force, especially without major consequences, it sets a terrible precedent. It could encourage aggression elsewhere, destabilize the whole region, maybe even unravel the international order we've had since World War II. Some analyses genuinely warn about risks escalating towards a wider conflict, maybe even a third world war scenario if things spiral.
So supporting Taiwan is seen as investing in stability, basically, preventing a much bigger catastrophe down the line.
That seems to be the calculation. Maintain the status quo, deter conflict, and you also have to factor in information warfare here.
Right, you mentioned that earlier.
Yeah, there are reports suggesting narratives trying to undermine confidence, saying the U.S. isn't reliable, foreign help won't come. This could well be attempts from the mainland to weaken Taiwan's morale and its international ties. So doubt.
Another layer to the pressure. So bringing it right up to today, what's the current situation like on the ground? What have we been seeing lately?
Well, the pressure from the mainland side has been pretty consistent and arguably increasing in some ways.
It's like what?
Frequent military drills around Taiwan, lots of flights, ships crossing the median line in the strait, that unofficial buffer. The numbers have gone up.
Okay.
Then you have things like Coast Guard ships entering waters near Taiwan's outer islands like Kinmen, more ambiguous pressure. Diplomatically, the push to isolate Taiwan continues getting countries to switch recognition.
And the info ops.
Still ongoing, trying to sway public opinion in Taiwan via social media, maybe putting pressure on certain individuals or groups. It's a sort of multi-front campaign.
Military, diplomatic, informational. So how is Taiwan holding up? What are they doing in response?
They're definitely focused on bolstering their defenses, increasing the defense budget, focusing on asymmetric warfare, making an invasion incredibly costly with things like missiles, drones, strengthening reserves.
Makes sense.
They're also tightening internal security, like scrutinizing cross-strait travel more closely to counter influence operations. And crucially, they're actively engaging internationally strengthening ties with the U.S., Japan, others, highlighting their democracy and economic value.
So staying vigilant, basically.
Exactly. The message seems to be, even with the mainland's own internal issues, the risk is still there, and Taiwan needs to be fully prepared.
Okay. So we've covered a lot. The values clash, the internal power plays in Beijing, Taiwan's global importance, the recent pressures. Bringing it all together, what does this mean for you, listening? What's the takeaway?
I think it gives you a much richer context for the headlines, you know? When you see news about Taiwan, you understand it's not just a simple argument over territory.
Right.
You see the deep historical roots, the different systems. You understand Beijing's actions might be driven by internal needs as much as external ambition. And you see the connection to your life through technology, global trade, international stability. It helps make sense of why this matters so much.
It connects the dots.
Yeah, exactly. You get the bigger picture, the stakes involved.
So here's a final thought to chew on as you follow this story. Considering those internal military challenges on the mainland, we talked about the purges, the potential mistrust, plus the obviously huge costs of any conflict, does that maybe shift how we think about future actions?
How so?
Well, could it mean that future escalations or moves might be less about a confident, grand strategic plan for swift unification and perhaps more about, well, internal political signaling, projecting strength for legitimacy back home, or maybe even driven by unpredictable dynamics within the military itself rather than just top-down strategy? Something to think about.
That's a really interesting question to ponder.
Indeed. Thank you for joining us for this deep dive on the Taiwan-mainland-China relationship. We hope this gives you a clearer lens on a truly critical global issue. We love getting into the weeds on this stuff, but we also like to keep it real and hopefully enjoyable for you. So if you're digging these deep dives and want more of our slightly less formal takes, be sure to hit subscribe for Sip and Talk right here on your podcast app.
And hey, since we're all about sharing the love, you should also definitely go check out our friend Micky's YouTube channel. Seriously entertaining stuff happening over there.
Yeah, Micky's great. You won't regret it. So until next time we dive deep, keep thinking, keep questioning.
Absolutely. Thanks for tuning in and exploring the deep end with us today.